Hey folks, here Eric again from Another Voice with Jason and Eric. Heard Mondays 1 to 2 on Spin FM 103.3 in Greenville, Greer, and Spartanburg. Also, you can go to canigetawordin.com, find us there, or go to iTunes and subscribe to our podcast channel, Another Voice with Jason and Eric. The Republican convention is over, and we're gearing up for the Democratic one. And the Republican convention ended weird, is what I want to say. I wasn't going to go into a lot about Clint Eastwood's performance, other than to say that about halfway through, I was expecting Ashton Kutcher to walk out and say, "Republicans, you've been punked," because I have no idea what Mr. Eastwood was doing. I have absolutely no idea why the Republican Party or Mitt Romney's campaign put that on there at all. And I like Mr. Eastwood. It was a waste, if you ask me. But we want to talk about the big speech. That's Mitt Romney's acceptance speech. Now, these speeches are supposed to be inspirational. Someone complained, well, that he didn't have a lot of specifics. Well, this is not the venue for specifics when it comes, when it comes to policy. You won't hear a lot of specifics when President Obama gives his speech in a few days. So I don't have a problem with that. But listening to the speech, it was a good speech. For a partisan speech, it was a good speech. The problem I had was a couple points. And we'll probably do 2 videos on this because there's a few things that we'll get into at the end. His 5 points to bring 12 million jobs or whatever it was. But the speech itself, I felt, first of all, there was this idea. There was this theme running. It was disjointed, if you ask me. It felt like he took a bunch of things that he had to address, issues where he was weak, things that might be good to smack at the president about, and kind of stuck them together, and then they had one guy tell the speech. And it felt a little disjointed. One of the things I just didn't get, I understand that Governor Romney has a deficit in likability with women, according to the polls. And he's facing a Democratic Party who is big on this whole war against women, Republicans hate women, Republicans wanted to put women back into the 15th century, which, sorry folks, there is no war against women. Just like there's no war against Christmas, there are positions and policies that are different that people disagree with. And yes, there are individuals who are misogynistic and they're chauvinists, but as a whole, that's not the issue. But moving on there. Because Mitt knows that, because Governor Romney knows that, there was an overemphasis on, look at me. I like women. I like women in power. I put women in power. My mama was in charge of the House. Representative Ryan did the same thing. I felt it was like, here, really, we do love women. We're not at, and I think the fact that they had strong governors, strong other elected officials who were women as well, I think that was where they needed to answer it, and not in this speech, which just seemed, it conceived contrived. It almost seemed like you're protesting too much. So I was not too happy about that. And then there was this, I think, it felt like the governor's speech was setting up things to attack that weren't quite accurate. It almost exaggerated the situation. First of all, he said that Americans always come together after elections. And I don't know what election he watched this, 4 years ago, because that didn't happen. Before President Obama got on the inaugural stand, he was being ripped apart across the country by the friends on the right. If I'm not mistaken, the famous line that from, I think it was Mitch McConnell, our number one political goal is to ensure that President Obama doesn't receive a second term. That doesn't sound like America's coming together. And then there was this idea about the economy. Governor Romney acknowledged that President Obama inherited a mess. He didn't actually specify where that mess came from, who might be responsible, but he mentioned it. But then, if you listen to the tone of his speech and the words he said, you would have thought that someone had beamed the Republicans in the country out of the space, out into outer space, and they were nowhere near this country for the last 4 years. And for that matter, before. That President Obama just failed, he didn't do what he's supposed to do, and that the economy is a mess because President Obama messed everything up. Now, you can make a case that some of the policies and programs that President Obama put in place, hoping and praying that they would work a certain way, didn't have the same success. I will hasten to say, not that they all failed. Like, the stimulus didn't fail. It just didn't do as much. And we'll talk about that another time, but think tax breaks. And I saw people physically, as I drove around the country, doing shovel-ready jobs being paid for by the stimulus. It didn't go far enough. Didn't cover enough. There may have been other problems. But I got this sense through this speech that the economic condition we're in today is a direct, total responsibility to President Obama. Now, tax policy, he can only suggest and sign. All these other economic plans, he can only suggest and sign. And that means Congress has a role in this. And even Republicans in Congress have a role in this. And even when the president had the majority in the House and the Senate, what he didn't have was a filibuster-proof majority. So I felt that this speech kind of shifted. It's the Obama economy. Nothing to do with how people acted. And then there's something I really want to touch as we end this particular video cast. He said Americans, through this tough time, worked 2 jobs. They paid high gas costs. They sacrificed and struggled. And why'd they do that? Because you're an American. You did it because that's what you had to do. What could you do? You worked harder, you did with less, and you sacrificed. Because that's what Americans do. And he was praising Americans for doing everything they could do, and then saying, of course, the president failed them because they're still in a bad situation. But you know what I didn't hear? The job creators. The uncertainty of the future. They had to wait. They couldn't create jobs. Why weren't they sacrificing? Why weren't they working harder? Why weren't they doing the things that he was praising the average American about? This idea, the uncertainty was the same whether you dug ditches or you were middle management or you were the CEO of a major corporation. The uncertainty was the same. But the majority of us doubled down and worked harder. But the majority of the people at the top, well, you know, it might be more taxes and that health care law, that's going to cost us money, and nothing happened. Where were the jobs? There's a disconnect here, because those guys are Americans too. So if you're going to praise people for sacrificing, you ought to criticize people for not. Just my opinion. And this idea of uncertainty of the future, because of Obamacare, because of regulations coming up, possible tax increases, did somebody forget that there's always uncertainty? Later in the speech, Governor Romney talks about growing economies and growing businesses involves risk-taking. Entrepreneurs are risk takers. The job creators are risk takers. But apparently, this time, you couldn't take a risk. Look, we've had tax increases, we've had regulation increases, we've had major legislation that was going to upturn all kinds of things. And the real job creators, the real American, let's get this done, worked through it. And this uncertainty. You had 4 years to plan ahead for what's going to happen with Affordable Care Act. Most of the regulations, most of the taxes, you're getting a 2, a 4, a 5, a 10-year window in which to prepare for it. Don't give me this concept that it's too much uncertainty. That's a cop-out. Now, I got off on a tangent, but mid-speech, I felt disjointed, but I also felt he was setting up straw men so that they could attack them and not deal with all the specifics. Now, we'll do another one today or tomorrow about the 5 steps that Governor Romney has that's going to turn this country around. just like he said that, that everybody expected, once President Obama was elected, that everything was going to turn around, it was going to be great, and it didn't. What a failure, what a disappointment. Well, he's got a plan that's going to turn everything around. Cool, great. He's going to be the hero. Until that time, make sure you listen to Another Voice with Jason and Eric on Spin FM 103.3 in Greenville, Grand Spartanburg. And while you're out on the web, go to pdoutfitter.com, your source of firearms for self-defense, emergency preparedness kit, and kits and gear, survival gear, and also classes dealing with concealed weapon carry permit, combat focused shooting, basically responsible gun ownership. That's pdoutfitter.com.